Hello, everyone, and welcome to another TSJW Network exclusive interview. I am Trellis Williams, and right here with me is Andrew Rogers. He's one of the original players in the MSAHA conference, as he was one of the original players for the Hattiesburg Forerunners. And Andrew, thank you for joining us here today.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah, for sure. And thank you for having me here in your office to do the interview. I'm like, hey, thanks for being here. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, you're welcome.
But you were one of the original players on the Hattiesburg Forerunners. Just take us through the origins of that organization and that basketball team through your eyes.
Yeah, man. Those early days were interesting. I remember I must have been 13 maybe. I think you age out of at some point playing upward basketball over there at the church, and I was itching to find some way to play. And so I remember there was an upward league for like an older class, an older group that they were starting out at Temple Baptist Church, and I was trying to recruit people because they needed more people to play. I was desperate to play somewhere, and wanted to play, but as a homeschooler, there weren't a lot of options. Yeah. So I was like going to all my friends, trying to recruit them to come out there to Temple to play in this upward league, just so we could, do something. And I remember going to Coach Dennis Aldi, and saying, "Hey, why don't y'all come out here and play? Like, we can at least get some sort of games in, have some competition." And I remember that was the first time I'd heard anything about it. Yeah. He told me, "Well, I'm actually thinking about maybe starting a homeschool basketball team where we can go out and compete against some other teams." And that was like, man, that was music to my ears, because I was, I guess I must have been 12, 13, something like that. And I had considered, like, man, I might go to PCS, I might go somewhere just so I can play basketball. Like, I, loved it, been playing it since I was 5 in any capacity that I could. Definitely thought that I was a lot better than I was. I wasn't as good as I thought I was, but I still loved it. And so I remember hearing Coach Dennis saying about that. Well, now he's coach. I remember Mr. Aldi saying, might start a team, and I guess it was that fall. It didn't happen that first year that I heard about it, but the next year he kind of organized it, and it started rough, man. We were in that gym over on South 20th Avenue with a bunch of guys that did not know what they were doing, and his first year at least, probably a couple of years, was just fixing our mechanics, teaching us how to do a layup with the right arm and right leg at the same time, teaching us how to, a proper jump shot form, teaching us so much of the basic mechanics that we didn't know. We had the competitiveness, we had the desire, we had, all the right tools, just didn't know how to play basketball. So it was a rough start initially, but
And just there in the start, you were talking about the working on the mechanics and that kind of stuff. Just now, let's focus on competition. So, what was the competition like at the beginning? Because you really don't have much to compare yourself to, since it's a homeschool organization and you're surrounded just by schools. Yep. What was that like there at those first couple of years?
We used to go to. I remember this vividly. We went to the Pain Center, not the Pain Center, that gym at Wesley Hospital. At the time, it was Wesley Hospital. It's something else now.
Probably Merit Health.
Yeah, there's just a gym in there, and we would go as a squad, 6 or 7 of us with Dennis as our coach. We would go in there and just try and find people to play us, find people to let us run pickup games against them, just so we could have somebody to play.
That is something.
I mean, we'd show up. We didn't know if anybody was going to be there. We didn't know, what the competition level was going to be like. We were playing against 50-year-old men, and we were playing against 25-year-old guys, and we got our butts handed to us 90% of the time. But there was a little bit of spark of life in there, a little bit of like, this we could be a team. This could be something real. We would go there and play. We went to the old Hattiesburg YMCA, downtown Hattiesburg. Oh, yeah. The building was like dilapidated. Like there was nothing in that building. It was, I think, essentially abandoned. But there happened to be a gym in the back.
Oh, man.
And we met some guys in there. I don't know where Dennis found them. I don't know how old they were. I know they were massive, and I know we had some bruises after that game.
Wow.
But I mean, we would play anybody we could. We would organize games against like the dads and the brothers and the uncles, and my brother Tommy would come play with us, and Alton Cade, and Pastor Tom Feethy, guys like that. Anybody we could play, we were playing, and it was. I mean, there was no other at the time. In the very beginning, I don't think there was even another homeschool team. Jackson came along a couple of months after us, but for that first summer, those first few months in the fall, I mean, we were playing anywhere and everywhere we could, and then couldn't play any private schools, couldn't play any public schools. Nobody else would let us even talk about it, talk about it with them. So we were finding competition anywhere we could.
So, but you guys did end up playing some private schools. Just tell us about like how that started and just kind of what the feeling was when y'all were able to suit up against a school.
Man, it was on one hand nerve-wracking, on the other hand exhilarating. It was like our first like real competition against real schools. I think Lamar Christian School. Yeah. And what was that team on South 49? They always wore pants. What was the name of that school, man? It was at a church too. There was some little small private school on South 49. They would let us play them, and Lamar Christian would let us play them. And then there was like a boarding school type deal in Purvis that would let us play them every once in a while. They had a tournament. That boarding school is not there anymore, I don't think, but they had a tournament that we would go play in sometimes as well, and it was exhilarating. Like in the Lamar Christian gym, they were the first gym that I remember playing in that had like bleachers. Wow. Like legit stands. Everything else was essentially we were playing at churches. But Lamar Christian was a legit gym. Yep. And they had bleachers, but the bleachers were kind of like high up off the ground. So you were probably 5 feet up is where the bleachers started. So it sounded super loud in there. And I remember I would get a pit in my stomach before those games. Because it felt like, and there probably were a lot of people, but it felt like there were thousands of people in there compared to what we were used to playing with all that noise. I mean, it felt like, looking back, it was probably 20 folks, and it was all our family, and they were, half the noise was the kids crying, all these homeschool kids in their vans, But it felt like this is a real environment, this is a real game, it was pretty fun.
Yeah, and Lamar Christian was always pretty, always seemed like they were pretty homeschool friendly when it comes to competition for sure. Yeah. And so I bet you that was awesome as well. When you started to form this homeschool league starting to get formed. So you mentioned mentioned Jackson coming up, also Laurel coming up, and
before Laurel there was Vicksburg. Yeah, it was us, Jackson, and Vicksburg in the very early days. Yep, and then Laurel eventually did. Yeah.
Yeah. So now once you start having like tournaments that involve these different organizations in the homeschool league, just take us through. That because for me personally, I like playing against good competition, but I love playing against in your league. Yeah. Like I love having a league. I love having standings, and have this little anticipation.
Oh yeah, a little rivalry.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like I like that kind of thing. So just talk about that building because that was unique as well.
That was one of those things where I think at least for me at the time. Again, I was probably 14, maybe when we first started this. It almost happened without me even realizing it. I don't know how many of the other guys were cognizantly aware of, there's a league forming, there's these other, it was cool to see, there's a homeschool team over there, there's a homeschool team over there. Like, kind of knowing like we inspired it a little bit or we helped birth it, even if it was kind of all at the same time. We were on the first one of the first ones. And I remember that first homeschool state tournament. That was when it felt like, this is something real. Yeah. It was us, and it was Jackson, I know, and I think Vicksburg, and I think we invited a team from Alabama.
Yeah, Tuscaloosa?
I know that we played them a lot later, but I don't think it was Tuscaloosa at first, because this team wasn't very good. Tuscaloosa was really good. Oh, yeah. And they would kick our butts. Yeah. So I remember them.
I know that they got developed early.
Yeah. I think they had already been around.
They don't exist anymore, that is the question.
Really?
Yeah, I played against them my last time when I was freshman, and they were good then, but I've never heard of them since, but I know that they were
really good. Yeah. And Meridian, I think it was us.
Meridian, okay.
Jackson, Vicksburg, and Meridian. Those were the 4 OGs, I think. Yep. Meridian had a carpet gym. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
A lot of carpet burns and a lot of That was a weird gym. Mm-hmm. But that first homeschool tournament was when it really felt like, oh man, this is legit, because we had 4 teams. They at the end of it, they had like an all tournament team, which I didn't know what that was. I didn't know that. Before that first year, I was like, what the heck is that? They had like trophies for the state championships. They had champions. It felt like a real deal. And it was a lot of fun. That first championship game was us versus Jackson. We both made it to the finals, and we beat them 50-15. Now I vividly remember the score of that first championship game, and then it drastically changed after that year. But Jackson got better really fast. And it was cool too because those guys, like with Jackson especially for us, it was a rivalry. You know, in the early days, those were the first two good teams. You know. And there was just a rivalry, but also kind of a friendship sparked there with some of those guys. Like they would come down to Hattiesburg in the summer and hang out at my house, and spend a weekend at my house, or I would go with them. Some of the Moody boys and I went to Guatemala, I think, on a mission trip together. Me and Spencer and them, and then a couple of other guys from Jackson went to Guatemala. We ended up playing like the Guatemalan 16U national team, and would go around to orphanages and play and share the gospel and stuff with some of the Jackson guys.
Yeah, I would say you built some real deal friendships with those guys for sure.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
That's awesome. And so going back to talking about with the team, with your coach, Coach Aldi, you mentioned him earlier. He coached through your senior year, I think 1 year past your senior year graduation. Yeah. What was it like playing for Coach Aldi? I mean, he had been a basketball player himself in his days, and so just take us through that.
Yeah. It was great for what we wanted, for what we were, for what we needed. I don't know that it could have been any better.
Yeah.
His approach to coaching us was, I will say, maybe you could call it a fatherly approach, because his sons were on the team.
Yeah.
And so his heart for his sons was not just, hey, let's learn to play basketball, let's learn to compete, let's learn to work hard. It was also, let's learn to do this in a way that glorifies the Lord. Let's learn to do this in a way let's do this in a way that sheds a light on the gospel.
Yeah.
So I remember a lot of those practices, we would spend 30 minutes in the room, outside the gym, just going through the scripture, going through, some sort of not necessarily, Bible lesson is such a cliche term, but for lack of a better term, a Bible lesson, or, he would open the scripture up and kind of show us how these were men that competed, these were men that fought, these were men that, were men, and this is who we're called to be, and this is how we're called to act on the court, sure, but also act in life, So it was a really cool combination of learning the fundamentals, kind of like I said, like he was working with some rough stuff back then. We were not good in the beginning. We had no coordination. We had, especially as a team, like, even when you are first trying to teach someone the game, that's one thing. But when you're trying to teach them, hey, here's how you play, here's the rules, here's how you work with a team as well. It was just a lot of new stuff for us. So in a lot of ways, he couldn't have been a better coach to teach us the fundamentals. He was very much about, here's a chest pass, here's how your shot should be, you should come from here and go up and leave an umbrella. Don't be fading away all the time. Go towards the basket. A lot of defensive fundamentals. And some stuff that, as I got older, I was like, okay, this is sort of outdated. This is sort of one way of looking at it. He was a post man most of the time, small forward. Yeah. So his view of the game was a little bit skewed to that. I was, a guard, and so learning from people like your dad, like my brother-in-law, like whoever I could learn from, I was like a sponge. Teach me some of these guard skills, teach me some of these things. But for Dennis, what he had and what he accomplished, with us, it was really impressive, and it was very much so what we needed, because it taught us a lot about life, and it helped us become friends. A lot of those guys that I played with back then, I'm still friends with now. That gave me a huge form of an outlet for socialization. That sounds like I was
I know
so left alone. It gave me just an outlet to be friends with people and to make friends, and those friendships really stuck.
Yeah, and if you could continue to expand on those friendships, because I know that you talked about that rivalry with the Victors, but at the same time, just basically you're building lifelong friendships with those guys, even your competitors. Yeah. But then you talk about the guys that you actually went and suited up with, and you went and played with. I mean, how often? I mean, we kind of talked about this a little bit before the interview, but how often do you still keep in touch with a lot of those guys that you played with?
Dude, some of them weekly. Guys like Bailey Hickman, who he didn't play real long. Yeah. But he and I talked to him yesterday. Yeah. James Carson, talked to him all the time. Spencer Hollingsworth occasionally. For a long time, I mean, I've lived with some of those guys in college and after college. I lived with some of those guys. We did life together. Bailey Hickman's a good example of what that homeschool sports can offer to homeschool kids. Is that before the team, Bailey and I had different interactions, different run-ins. We would do like different history bees, and we'd go to different smaller homeschool events that we ran into each other. We kind of developed a friendship. But I would say he only played for 1 year. But in that year, he and I got to be pretty good friends. He was a little younger than me, so I remember like teaching him some stuff about the game. And then I remember the day when he beat me in 21. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was so pissed. But, we only played for a short time together. But that friendship, he's my best friend. He was the best man at my wedding. That he's continues to be one of the closest friends that I have. Even though we only played a short time together, that's where that friendship really took root. That's where it really kind of like took off, having that camaraderie and that competition together and stuff like that. And I mean, a lot of those guys, the Aldi boys for sure. I haven't seen a whole lot of them since they moved off, but we were pretty close there for a while. Spencer and James, like I said, a lot of those guys we're still close with and spend a lot of time with.
And so you mentioned your relationship with Bailey, and these guys that were younger than you. He was just a little bit younger than you, but you had guys that were well younger than you. And this includes me, because I was around the team. I wasn't on the team when you were playing, but I was around the team. I was well younger. But I just remember that you always made me not feel like I was that as much younger as I actually was. Like I thought you treated a lot of the guys that were younger than you very well. Just what did you see your leadership role as being, especially being one of those original guys on that team?
Yeah. Man, I don't know. I think part of it was experiences that I'd had in my own life. All of my siblings were at least 10 years older than me. My brothers were 14 and 16 years older than me, and so I was the benefit of the way they treated me, and very much so. Like, they taught me a lot, and I learned a lot from them. I still do, but it wasn't that they put me down or made me feel young. They let me come and hang out with them and their friends. They let me do things with them that I really enjoyed. I was like, man, this is what I want to be like. So I think when it came to the younger guys like that, my approach was just that they were part of the team, and that they had some stuff to learn. But man, I learned how to do a layup 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Like, how am I going to judge them for not being good when I was at their position not that long ago?
Yeah.
And I want to help them get better. I want to help them learn. I remember, guys like Colby Taylor, Daniel McKellar playing, who again weren't super young, weren't way younger than me. But I remember like just wanting them to succeed, wanting them to be good. I remember especially Daniel, because he would be my sub. Whenever I got tired or needed a break or got in foul trouble or something like that. I remember specifically one game we were playing Tuscaloosa at Meridian, two of the teams we just talked about, on that carpet gym, and I must have made 15 turnovers in the first half. I was doing terrible. And Coach pulled me out. He was like, you are not playing anymore. He put Daniel in, and Daniel killed it, man. He had that workhorse mentality. He was on defense getting low, slapping the floor, making some great passes, man, just being that dog out there that he always was, I remember being so proud of him just because of the way that he like stepped up and the way that he performed when I was doing so terrible. I remember, I don't know why. I mean, he's not that much younger than me, but I remember being like super proud of him and super like, man, like you did a really good job,
Yeah.
I think in those later years, probably my junior, senior year, I think I was just one of the older ones, and I saw where in some instances some leadership needed to be taken, and I was like, man, I guess this is kind of what I need to do, and I felt like the Lord had called me to do it in a way that encouraged people towards Christ as much as I could. So I don't know. I don't think there was ever a conversation with Dennis or anybody that was necessarily like, hey, you need to be a leader. I think it was just one of those things where I naturally I love this thing, and I love these people that are doing it with me, and I want to help us all do it well.
Yeah. And you mentioned Daniel. I played 1 year with Daniel. He returned because he had left, and then he returned in the middle of the season, actually. And intensity. The intensity really ramped up when he joined the team.
Dude, No doubt, man. That guy, he would go in the game and people who he was guarding were like, oh, not this guy again, man. He won't leave me alone. I mean, he would not let you breathe. He was on, and there was no getting away from him.
Yeah, no, he's quick, too.
He's quick.
Yeah, no, so that's always fun. But, so if you could just give me, like, your favorite memory of your time on that team.
Man, favorite memory. That's tough. I would say, in general, probably the tournaments were always really fun. Going and staying in hotels, with the team, playing that many games consecutively, kind of the, getting to see that immediately how your wins and losses affect your positioning throughout the season, and then eventually through the tournament, you can kind of see that. But you see it in a tournament immediately, like, oh man, we lost now, so we got to play 2 more games to get back to the championship. Just that sense of competition that was really heightened during tournaments. That was a lot of fun, and you also got a lot of instant reward from it. I was fortunate enough to be able to make all tournament teams, and a lot of those that we played in.
Yep.
And that was cool. Obviously, loved getting rewarded for it, getting acknowledged for it. Love just the chance to play that often. That quickly, consecutively.
Because your senior year, you played about 40 games. There's a lot of games you played your senior year.
I think senior and junior maybe.
Yeah.
I think because I don't know how many stats we kept, but I know like those last 2 years, our record was like close to 20-20 was kind of an even.
21
keel.
and 21, I think was your
Was it
senior
really?
year.
Yeah. But we played a lot of games.
Yeah. So that's awesome.
Yeah. I remember my junior year, we went to the national championship in Branson, Missouri, or something like that. Springfield, Missouri.
Yep.
Yeah. And I was fortunate enough to get elected to the 3rd team All-American team, something like that, and got to go play like in this big collegiate gym, with a bunch
the
of
Missouri
people
State,
watching.
is that correct?
Yeah. Yep. Got to play in their gym with a bunch of people watching in this all-tournament game, and it was a lot of fun. It was a cool experience. So
yeah, that's awesome. So now, so it's kind of going back talking about the league a little bit. So now you're talking about this league has 9 basketball organizations now, and you're spanning. So it's just been a lot of expansion since then. And so when you think of yourself, and you were there when it was absolutely nothing, there was zero going on, and then it got started when you were there. When you were playing in the beginning stages, did you envision it growing to the size that it is, or did you envision it growing to being a full-blown thing? I mean, now the homeschool teams, they play private schools all the time. Now they can play public schools.
Yeah.
But a lot of this stuff piggybacks off of what you guys did when it got started.
I definitely did not envision this because we had guys recruiting their sisters to play on their team so we would have enough people to play. The Vicksburg team had at least 2 girls on it because they didn't have enough people to play. Yeah. I mean, it was one of those things where every year we were like, oh man, are they coming back? Are they coming back? Yeah. There was us and Jackson, and then eventually Laurel got pretty consistent, and Meridian was fairly consistent, but.
You're talking about organizations coming back.
Right, that's what I mean.
Exactly.
We're talking about that whole organization. Are we going to have anybody to play?
Yeah.
Is it going to be just us and Jackson, or is this Laurel team going to have a coach? It was very fluid in the beginning there, and especially with coaches, because these guys are volunteers essentially, probably still.
No, they still are.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
Still a thing.
Yeah, it's a huge sacrifice. I remember I actually went back and coached forerunners for our assistant coach helped.
I remember this when I was playing. Yeah.
And I mean, I would leave class at USM, I would go to work, and then I would go to the game, and if I hoped I made it on time to the game. A couple of games I was there late,
Yeah.
And it's a sacrifice for these guys that do it year after year, night after night. It's a big deal. Yeah. So it was always one of those things where like, man, I hope we have somebody to play. I hope this thing keeps working so that we can play next year. Maybe hopefully another school let us play them. Fingers crossed. It seemed like there was always a rumor of, oh man, we're going to get to play PCS this year. Oh no, it didn't work out, So I don't think there was any way of me ever considering or believing that it would have made it to 9 teams or made it to now we can play public schools. Like, that's bizarre. Yeah. That's awesome, but unfathomable back then. Unfathomable.
Yeah, absolutely. It is something else, but definitely definitely appreciate you and the people that were around you that had the guts to stay in it, stick it out with the homeschool. Because I mean, you were saying how you had it in your mind, and you're just kind of wondering, would you go to school to go play basketball or something like that? But then, y'all, I mean, and I'm just talking about my situation. I was in public school up until I was in 6th grade, but I started being homeschooled, and I mean, once I got into it, I was like, be homeschooled the rest of the way. There's plenty of basketball opportunities.
Exactly.
It's like if that there wasn't, I probably would have gone back.
Yeah.
So it's very cool that people like you, people like Coach Aldi and his family, stuck out the homeschooling, even though they wanted to play sports to make this happen. So that's really good. But I really appreciate you doing the interview with us for sure.
Absolutely, man.
I know the viewers appreciate that as well, hearing from one of the originals.
Of course.
Thank you all for joining us. Please hit the subscribe button right now as well, and share the video as well. We've got more content coming up. We should be. Thank you all for joining us. I am Trellis Williams. We out.